the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. In the studio with us is artist Atila and author Connie Kaplan. Atila was born in Hungary, and by the 70s had been to London and Sweden on his way to Los Angeles. What were you doing in London, Atila?
Well, first I just went there for a music scene and just hanging out, taking in the beautiful London, good old London, and did a lot of walking and basically just observing, you know, the life other than Hungary.
Other than Hungary?
Yes.
Was Hungary pretty depressed at that time?
Yes, it is a bit because of the you know, political situations. There is a constant pressure on Hungarians, and it's not as colorful as London or LA, for example. And I was like just observing all the shops and people I came across, the music as well. Music always been a big part of me. So they have fabulous clubs and musicians to associate with. So I was enjoying myself basically in London.
And then you went on to Sweden.
Then in Sweden I was already tried to relax and to work a little bit other than, you know, just hanging. And I worked as an au pair.
You did? That
yes,
was very chic at that time to have a man au pair.
Yes, it was. It was. I was taking care of 3 kids, and I did shoppings. And Sweden was also very cold, just like Hungary. And I was longing for warm weather.
You know, nowadays, I have to stop on this au pair thing because
yes.
I think it's funny. There have been stories now about not women au pair all the time, not young girls, but young boys, because they say young boys can take care of the boy children better.
That was my profession, actually, to make a couple of sandwiches and take them to their door and receive them back from the school. They were always very wet. They had boots. You know, in Sweden it's constantly snowing and it's cold, and just taking the clothes off, putting it back, it was, you know, good 15 minutes, half an hour.
That's great. But had you really dreamed about coming to Los Angeles? Were these stops along the way?
Yes, my primary reason when I left Hungary, I wanted to come to US, to America. But in London I couldn't make any money. In Sweden they were paying well. So I, you know, put some money together for the airplane and come to LA. And this is where I stayed for the past 20 years.
What was for the past 20 years? What was your desire? Why did you want to come to America?
Well, for one thing, you know, Southern California, the weather, also the movies. I was constantly watching movies. Music scene and artistic freedom and expression alone was very valuable for me and still is. And also the economic wealth. You know, you have to keep that in mind. If you're already traveling, already have a chance to choose where you're going to live in the world,
where do you
US
go?
is number one.
You actually made yourself known in California as a punk hairdresser.
That's right.
What is a punk hairdresser?
It's basically the mohawk and the shaved parts and the exciting, the edge, the leading edge of the creating, you know, like shaved and long pieces of putting it together in a kind of striking ways.
And yet that's lasted 20 years.
I'm
you
amazed.
came 20 years
I'm
ago.
amazed with that because I thought it was just, you know, like a season, temporary, like the Beatle haircuts.
Right, exactly.
And I'm still amazed when I came back after traveling in the Orient for a while. After 6 years, I thought, you know, punk's going to be totally over. But no, it is still, you know, like going strong, and it's a lifestyle. It became a lifestyle right now.
Well, we talk about you as an artist.
Yes.
And the hairdressing is a very artistic
Yes, it is.
venture.
It's-
You draw.
I draw constantly. I draw daily from my clientele as well, and also I draw at home.
Tell us about this, because this is on the screen right
This
now.
is my beautiful friends and passerbys in the beauty salon who come in to say hello, and there's just beautiful girls and beautiful people to look at, and I try to get them, to pose for me for a minute, and there's a certain speed involved, when you're drawing young people, they're very fast. So first I just start to, get the points, and then I figured I'm going to later on fill it out, the lines.
And you use magic marker. Is that stay? Is that like archival art?
We can discuss that. That's for one thing, Keith Haring and a lot of
the
famous
graffiti artists.
graffiti artists use that as an immediate, and he also used these dotted lines, like Hockney also dotted lines,
Right.
Van Gogh.
Exactly.
And I was always fascinated with the light, of how the light catches the face, and how you can draw light, and how can I draw white lines, other than dot it out, and then sort of compute visualization of the subject, some kind of just start appearing.
Oh, so the lines, the dots all bring it out together.
Exactly. So, and then the pattern of the lines also can create a little bit, if I want to go deeper, or leave it flat, or accent it, for example, for the shadows.
Like this.
And
You've got somebody sitting.
somebody's sitting, yes, and he came in and he sit down, and he had this board over there, and he was thinking, I don't know what was he thinking. I said, just don't move for a minute. I like that pose. And that's how I draw this one of him.
Do you think that it's a crossover from cutting hair? I mean, these lines and these dots, do you do that with the hair?
I think so,
that
because
feeling?
the hair has, this moment of, sparkling part, and then also a deeper tones and down to the black.
But it's also quick when
Also
you're
quick,
cutting.
and it's also a constant lining somehow up
yeah.
here, and then also you're working with the dimension of it, and working with a face, working on someone's head is inspiring. Everybody has something uniquely beautiful that just captures your eye, and that for example your eyes right now just sparkling. So if I would draw you, I would start drawing right the eyes, and then would probably get an earring there also sparkling, some of your hands, and then the hair as an overall, to support. That would be my negative space, but your eyes
Oh, I
would be
see, and
the
then
first
and then
sparkling.
you.
That's how I would go for it for you. But then again, in his position, it was more just the way he was sitting, kind of mad. The legs and the bondage pants. And also,
So he was the perfect thing for
it
you.
was a perfect, kind of chaotic lines, and zipper here, little badge there, and you just try to, get it down chaotically, and then later on I filled in the space.
Well, you look like a rocker, of course, with your your velvet pants, rhinestone buttons up,
Yes.
fabulous shoes. Do you design clothes as well?
In Japan, I had a chance to design this, again, Americana, like I told you, this 60s piece, and love and flowers and sunshine, rainbows. They're very much into environmental beauties.
When you went just to Japan to work, is that what you were doing, or all over the Orient?
Just to Japan, I should say, just to Tokyo.
And
yes.
did you go to Tokyo to do clothes, or to paint, or to what did you go? Why
My
did you go?
primary invitation was to design fake logos for, because I like to do this drafting, you see, drafting type of drawings, and that was the primary, my first assignment actually.
Was to do
And
logos for clothes?
Yes, like Cha-Cha-Cha, Himalaya,
Oh, I see.
also Hollywood Ranch Market in Tokyo.
Oh,
It's
things-
become a very famous store.
It
It's
used
right
to
next to
be-
Paul Gaultier in Daikayama area. Paul Gaultier and
Hollywood.
Ranch Market.
It used to be right here on Vine, right near the studio.
And this friend of mine who worked in Hollywood Ranch Market, right here in Vine. And he thought it was an appropriate name for Americana, the clothing and souvenirs and just anything.
Oh, so you went with him.
Yes.
I see. But this is very peculiar because here you are from Hungary.
Yes.
You still have a very strong accent.
Oh, yes,
Even
I'm
though you've
afraid I
been here
do.
20 years, they've taken you to the Orient to do Americana.
That's it was bizarre, but that's exactly what I was expecting from America. Something that would just crisscross my life, and I would have to relate to different environments and people, and just digging it, loving it, why I'm happening, why I'm at it.
Well, before we leave, I know you just did a CD.
Yes.
Cadillac Jack.
That is the name of my CD, Cadillac Jack. That is drum and bass, beat-oriented music. Also has loops, generated loops that I took from my older CD that has reggae and bit Indian and bit of this disco-ish pulsation. And
the whole thing is one long
groove, like 15 minutes long. And I especially print it for the New Year celebration, the Millennium
so it
celebration.
can go on for years
exactly.
and years.
It has its own groove.
Its own lifetime.
Its own lifetime, yes. Own repetitious patterns. And
do you sing at all?
I sing not directly on this CD, but the loops that we took from my last CD, I have vocals, yes.
And do you
which is speeded up.
Do you play it?
I play the guitar.
Do you?
Yes, I play the guitar, and I also put down the new electronic drum and bass sounds. So I have a new track that meets with the old beat somehow. So it has all digitized. It's all. Never missing a note.
Give us one little poetic thing that before we'll close with that.
Okay, well, the poetic lyrics on here, it's basically just like optical illusion and like a repetitious sort of coming from a far end of the speakers and then coming from you and then repeats. But in the 80s, one of these poetic song that I wrote for David Jove New Wave Theater was called The Gun Control. It was a very strong issue at the time. Still is.
Still is.
Still is, but at the time it was just constantly. And it captured my imagination, and I like to
oh, good.
Sing or just spit it out, all these punk lyrics about gun control. Anybody can buy a gun and shoot you just for fun. Gun, 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 gun. They assassinate the leaders. They're killing the religious. They're murdering the famous. And they are your neighbors. You or me, we could be next. Just a small print in the papers. Shot dead. So that was one of these
and that was from the 80s,
that
and
was
it's
right
so
from
poignant
the 80s,
for today.
And it was on a strict hard beat, and I had a bit of a chorus line for gun, 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 gun.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I had beautiful three girls who were screaming in the background. It was chaotic. It was fantastic. It was a
great.
momentum.
And you've been fabulous today. I have to ask you one question.
Yes.
Do you always use Atila? Do you have a longer name?
Now since I'm a citizen, I've been using Jack.
Oh, yeah, Atila Jack?
Yeah, that's my middle name, official middle name when I become a US citizen, and I'm happy to use Jack many times.
Was it hard because you had a Hungarian name? Is that why you dropped it?
Yes, Atila brings a little bit of a history lesson and geography lesson with it. If I introduce myself with my name that my mother gave me, Atila, of course. And I always felt it was a little bit of like unnecessary conversation. You know what I mean? I always fall back in that same exact questions, where are you from, etc.
Well, that's why I didn't want to ask it, but I thought I should ask.
Anyway, I could like draw a really quick portrait of you while we are
Well, as
talking.
we leave, you can start. Yeah,
oh, we are already like in that far.
Well,
like I said, your beautiful eyes. I'm going to take that down really quick.
And I'm going to
eyebrows.
thank you. Thank you very much for being on. And
Pleasure
at
is
the
mine.
end, when you finish, we'll hold it up on the final roll.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with Connie Kaplan. Thanks to Atila. I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with our guest Connie Kaplan, who wrote The Woman's Book of Dreams. Connie holds a master's in television production and psychology and lives in Santa Monica with her husband and her 2 children. Up until 1988, she worked as a television director, and then something happened that changed your life, Connie. What was it?
Yes, I have to correct you. I was an associate director. Directors get a little upset if you claim to have been a director.
Oh, I see. They also get more money, right? I thought that's what you were going to say.
I was working as an associate director at the time, and I just woke up ill one day. And I, as you know, and as your wonderful cast and crew here know, you don't call in sick just because you're sick when you're on, just when it's production, you know. So I try to go to work anyway, and I literally could not function. And I had to call somebody in to take my place, and eventually that person had to take my job because I could not recover.
Do you think it was that Epstein's bar that they talked about?
I guess it probably was. I was never really diagnosed. You know, that was in the early days of those immune deficiency problems.
Right, before they could...
doctors were kind of like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
So
but you couldn't move.
Right. I was just exhausted. My mind went. That was the scariest part. I couldn't think. And you know, in television production, I had been very capable of handling a lot of details and distributing information, and all of a sudden, I couldn't figure out the difference in a doorbell and a telephone.
Oh, you mean it really was confusing?
Yes, my mind just went, and I couldn't remember my daughter's name sometimes, and I was just in really big trouble. And so I slept. That was just really basically all I could do. And my wonderful husband rented a little cottage for me down at the beach. And I would just get up in the morning, I'd get my daughter off to school, and I would drive down to the beach, and by about 8:30 in the morning, I would be asleep again. And I slept till around 6, and I would come home and have dinner with my family and go back to sleep again. And that was my life, and this lasted for 18 months.
Wow.
So I was really pretty out of it. But the interesting thing was that for as out of it as I was in normal reality, I was really into it in the dreams. And I had these recurring dreams where teachers would come to me in the dream time and teach me about dreaming.
Ah, so
that's where I got all of this information while I was asleep.
So the information was coming from your dreams?
The information was coming from my dreams. I was remembering the dreams. I wasn't understanding the information. They weren't, you know, they weren't generous enough to bring a blackboard and write down an outline and let me take notes. You know, they were just showing me what dreaming is in the dream.
What is a dream?
A dream is an energetic, spiritual experience.
Energetic,
spiritual experience. This is what I was shown is that, you know, when you lie down and go to sleep, in the beginning of your sleep time, when you lose consciousness of yourself as an ego and you lose your body and you lose the bed and you're in this very delicious, familiar black space, this is what my teachers told me is the dream.
But we don't remember that. I don't remember hitting that black space.
Well, but you were shaking your head, agreeing with me that you kind of remember it.
This is what happens, I think, because you go to sleep.
What happens is you dissolve your personal will. You dissolve your personal will into this sort of collective cosmic soup of potential. And you have an energetic restoring period. Now, the mind wakes up a little bit later and says, all right, something has just happened and it's my job to make sense out of it. So what you remember is a story, but it's a metaphor of the energetic experience that you had.
So that's the dream?
The regeneration time is the actual dream.
Well, should we remember these things? Should we pay attention to them? Do they tell us things?
What we're paying attention to, because all we really can remember, is the story, the metaphor. And we're paying attention to that because that is telling us what our energy body was able to do. That experience is telling us what we learned in kind of a spiritual way while we were off on this energetic journey. Now, what's interesting about that is that when we're in that place, that rich black cosmic soup, we're actually in potential. We're in possibility. We're in what is not yet. So we're actually in the future. Even though the story we remember may look like our past, because all our mind has to pull from is our past, all the symbols and stuff of our past. What we're really doing is going into the future and magnetizing what's about to come.
But how, if you remember those things and you put them down, can you start reading them? Do you read dreams? Can you read those things?
Can you read the future? Do you
yeah,
mean?
I mean,
exactly.
That's part of it.
Exactly. That's what we all do. We remember the future in our dream time. We begin to see what is coming, and that's the reason that I encourage dreamers to wake up, because what we're dreaming is what is coming. If we're recreating our past, if we're uncomfortable with the world that we live in, and a lot of people are, I am. It's because we're recreating the past. We're not being clear and clean to bring in the beauty of what's coming.
I've heard a lot of people talk about reading dreams, and they sound like old wives' tales because they conjure up, as you say, the past. And they talk about things that happened. You're dreaming this because yesterday you had an accident, so today you're remembering it and you're applying it to other things. But you're saying that doesn't actually happen.
I'm saying that that's the result of Western myopic me, everything's about me thinking. And no, we dream the world into being. We dream the future. And I'm trying to encourage people to take a look at that. See, the fact is we do it all the time. We dream something. Let's say you dream about a friend that you haven't heard from in about 5 years.
Right.
You don't really know where that person is anymore. You just dream about them, and the next day they call you.
Exactly. What is that?
That's dreaming the future. That's what we do all the time. But it's too scary to really say, I dreamed her, I tapped her in the dream space, and as a result she called me. That's too scary. That's like, that's called blasphemy in some of our religions.
But that's kind of psychic. Psychic vision too. Is that? Would you think psychics? Now this is very interesting when you're saying psychics maybe are dreaming about what's happening ahead of time, but their eyes are wide open.
Yes, exactly. Psychics are in the dream time all of the time.
Ah, I see. So that's why people can more tend to know what's going on because of the where they are. Now, you wrote this woman's book of dreams. We have hundreds of books about dreams, I would imagine. Why is your book so special?
Well, for one thing, a lot of the books about dreams tell you what dreams mean.
That's the other. That's why I was asking you. And they also tell you write the story down. Do you tell that? Do you say write the story down?
I do say write the story down. But the reason I say write the story down is because we dream in cycles. We dream according to the patterns of the moon, believe it or not. So when the moon is in a certain sign of the zodiac, it sends us a certain kind of dream.
Does that happen because of my certain sign of the zodiac?
Yes,
too?
that happens because of your specific, unique pattern.
I see.
So every person has to find her own dreaming patterns in order to really understand it. But there are going to be some nights, you see, when you're more psychic, when you're more telepathic.
So that's what this book is about?
There are going to be other nights when you're more prophetic. So let's say, or other nights when you're more psychological. There are some dreams that are really about you, So if you dream about an earthquake, it's very helpful to know what kind of dream you were having that night.
I see.
Do you see? So I encourage people to write it down, but I encourage them to also put the moon information and track it that way.
Can men read this book? It says it's a woman's book.
It does. It is a woman's book. Yes, men can certainly read it, and there are a lot of reasons why. Men also dream cyclically. Of course, but their cycles are harder to track because they don't have menstrual cycles and they don't have the same kind of predictability about it. This book is about women's dreaming, but there's certainly nothing sexier than a man who really understands a woman. So
that's a good thing.
That's a good reason to read it.
You're working on a doctorate, and I have to say one thing, you're called the High Priestess of Dreams. What kind of a title is that?
When I finally woke up and I started trying to understand this dreaming, I started looking for teachers, alive, wakeful teachers, you know, who could help me understand. And one of the people I found is a Native American woman named Heather Valencia. She's been a wonderful teacher for me and very helpful. And she's the person in the endorsement of the book. She said Connie is the high priestess of dreams.
So that makes me feel better.
That's sort of like the king of rock and roll. You know, it just stuck.
I thought you were the cult leader of the dream world.
No, I haven't started a religion yet.
But you are working on a doctorate.
Yes. I'm at the University of Creation Spirituality, which is Matthew Fox's new university in Oakland, California. So I'm working on a doctorate in spirituality.
Well, before we leave, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for watching us. And Atila, who was on the show before you, did a portrait of me, so we put it next to you.
That's beautiful.
We're going to show it on the camera. And we're going to thank our viewers for writing. We ask you to keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917, and keep writing your dreams down, and Connie Kaplan can tell you all about them. Goodbye. We'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.